It was my second week on the night shift. The first week had been boring in a way I thought I'd be grateful for. A handful of noise complaints, a drunk who couldn't find his own house, one domestic disturbance that ended quietly when the husband passed out before the cops got there. That night, the room felt different. I couldn't explain it. The dispatch center always had this low, humming background noise from the equipment, a constant that you stopped hearing after a while. But that night it felt louder, like the air itself was buzzing. It was 2:13 a.m. when the call came in. I'd been staring at the wall clock for a few minutes, watching the second hand crawl. The headset crackled, and I straightened automatically, hand hovering over the keyboard. 911, what's your emergency? Silence. I tried again. 911, can you hear me? Nothing, except a sound. It was faint at first, like wind over a microphone, but heavier, steadier, breathing. I sat up straighter. If you can't speak, tap your phone once for yes, twice for no. The breathing didn't change. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't fast. It was slow, deliberate, like someone was making sure I could hear it. I checked the caller ID. Blocked. No location data. No number. Just the word, unknown. That's not uncommon for cell towers out here. If someone's out in a rural dead zone, sometimes the system can't get an exact fix. Still, protocol said I had to try. Are you hurt? I asked. Silence. The breathing stayed steady. I muted my mic for a moment and looked over at Mike, the shift lead 2 desks down. Got a live line, no voice. Just breathing, I whispered. Trace it, he said without looking up from his screen. I unmuted and kept my voice calm. This is emergency services. If you're in danger, I'm going to send help. Please stay on the line. I started the trace request. The system clock ticked down from 60 seconds. Normally, if the phone was on long enough, it would ping at least one tower. But the progress bar just froze. The breathing got louder. Not in volume exactly, more like it was in my ears instead of the headset. I checked my mic settings, wondering if maybe my own breathing was feeding back somehow. I held my breath. The sound on the line stopped. I exhaled slowly. The sound on the line started again, in perfect sync. My skin prickled. I took a shallow breath. The sound matched it exactly, like an echo with no delay. I leaned back, staring at the wall. Mike, I said quietly, still keeping my mic open to the caller. This isn't normal. It's matching me. He looked over, frowned. You mean they're mocking you? No, I said. Like, perfectly. Every inhale, every exhale, even the pauses. He got up and came over, bending down to listen on the monitor speaker. After a few seconds, his eyebrows pulled together. Weird. Try talking about something random. See if they respond. I glanced at the time, 2:16 a.m., then back at the call screen. I had pizza for dinner tonight, I said into the mic, feeling stupid. The breathing didn't change. Mike gave me a look like, okay, that's not working, and went back to his desk. Just keep logging it. If they hang up, note the time. The caller stayed, minute after minute, always breathing when I breathed, always silent when I held my breath. At one point, I stood and walked toward the window. I could see the street outside, empty under the yellow street lamps. I inhaled deeply, so did they. I exhaled, so did they. It didn't feel like mocking anymore. It felt like sharing, like whoever it was inside my breath. I sat down again, typing my notes in the log. My fingers were tight on the keyboard. Halfway through writing, breathing matches operator's respiration exactly, I realized my hands were trembling. The trace request timed out. Unable to locate caller. Caller, I need you to say something. Anything. Nothing. Do you know who I am? The breathing stayed the same. But then on my next inhale, it wasn't just one breath. There were two. One perfectly matching mine, and another, deeper, slower, just barely behind it. I froze, my chest tight. When I breathed again, both breaths followed, the second one trailing me by half a second. It made me think of someone standing right behind you in the cold, their breath brushing the back of your neck. The clock hit 2:21 a.m. I reached over and tapped the line hold button to see if it was just in my headset feed. The moment the line went on hold, the sound cut. I tapped back in. The breathing returned instantly, matching me again. Mike, I said quietly, I think this is coming from here. He didn't look up. What do you mean here? I don't think they're out there on a phone. Then where? I held up my hand. I'd stopped breathing completely for a full 5 seconds. The line was dead quiet. Then a slow inhale that wasn't mine. Long, heavy. The hair on my arms rose. I reached up and pulled the headset off my ears, setting it gently on the desk. The sound didn't stop. The breathing was still in my ears, not through the headset. It was in the room. I turned slowly in my chair, scanning the shadows between the glowing monitors and filing cabinets. Mike looked at me, confused. "What is it?" I didn't answer. I was too busy listening. Somewhere to my left, a soft, steady breath matched mine again. I put the headset back on. The line was still open, still breathing. I didn't know if the sound in the room and the sound in my ears were the same, or if there were two separate people. The clock ticked to 2:23. The caller hadn't hung up. I thought about disconnecting, but the protocol said, never end a call with an unknown unless confirmed safe. And I didn't feel safe. The breathing kept going until 2:27. Then, without warning, it stopped mid-exhale. I listened for another minute. 2, 3, nothing. The call disconnected itself. No number in the log. No recording in the archive. When I told Mike, he just shrugged. Probably a tech glitch. Or some creep with a soundboard. But glitches don't make the air in the room feel heavier. They don't make you feel like your lungs aren't entirely your own. I didn't say it out loud that night, but I will now. When I breathed in, it wasn't just air. Something was breathing me back that I didn't sleep the day after that call. I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard again that steady, exact breathing and the other one trailing behind it like a shadow. I kept telling myself it was some idiot with a mic setup, maybe running a prank. I'd even Googled breathing prank calls at 8 a.m. in my kitchen, just to see if other dispatchers had stories like mine. There were a few. Most sounded harmless, but none of them mentioned the sound being in the room. By the time my next night's shift rolled around, I was already on edge. The air in the dispatch center felt stale, like it had been sitting there all day waiting for me. The hum of the monitors pressed against my ears, louder than it should have been. Mike didn't mention the call. He didn't even look at me when I sat down. That should have been a relief. It meant I could just focus on work, but instead it made me feel watched. The night was quiet at first. A noise complaint. A woman calling about a suspicious vehicle that turned out to be her own neighbor's car. Routine. Then, at 1:47 a.m., the line lit up. I put on my headset, my stomach tightening. 911. What's your emergency? Silence. Not total silence this time. I could hear it right away. The breathing. Slow. Even. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This is emergency services, I said. Do you require assistance? No answer. I inhaled, they inhaled. I exhaled, they exhaled. I glanced at the caller ID. Unknown. Same as before. I kept my voice calm. I'm going to attempt to locate your call. Please remain on the line. Mike must have noticed my posture stiffen because he called over without looking up. Same as last time? I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on the trace window as it started its countdown. 58 seconds, 57. The breathing stayed with me. Perfect. No delays. I forced myself to take longer breaths, just to see if I could throw them off. They followed exactly. At 23 seconds, the system pinged. My stomach turned cold. Location acquired. 1179 Delmont Avenue. I stared at it. That was the abandoned office building across the street. I looked up through the front windows of the dispatch center. Delmont Avenue sat quiet in the sodium yellow streetlight. Across the road, the office building loomed, its windows dark and dusty. No signs of life. Mike must have seen my face because he walked over. Where is it? I pointed at the screen. He leaned in, frowned. That place? Thought they condemned it years ago. That's what I thought too. He crossed his arms. Could be a transient with a cell phone. Signal bounce, maybe. You want me to send a unit? I hesitated. Yeah, just keep them on the line while they check. He nodded and went back to his desk, radioing an available patrol. I kept my mic open. Sir, or ma'am, help is on the way. Please stay on the line. The breathing didn't change. Through the front windows, I could see headlights in the distance as the patrol car approached Delmont. I told myself it was fine, that whoever was would be found sleeping in there, or maybe there'd be no one at all and it'd be chalked up to bad cell triangulation. But then, the breathing got louder. Not over the headset in the room, It was faint at first, like it was coming from the far side of the office. But as I sat there, it felt closer, like the air around me was heavier. I pulled the headset slightly away from my ear. I could still hear in both places. The patrol car pulled up to the curb outside the abandoned building. Through the window, I saw the officers get out, flashlights cutting through the dark. "Dispatch, we're on site," one of them said over the radio. No visible entry points. Windows boarded. No sign of anyone moving inside. The breathing in my headset was so clear now, I could hear the faint rasp of the nose, the moisture of the exhale. I muted the mic and whispered toward Mike, "It's closer." He looked over. "You mean the sound's louder?" I nodded. He rolled his chair over and put one side of the headset against his ear. After a few seconds, he pulled back, frowning. "Weird. Sounds like they're right in here with us." We both turned toward the darkened hallway that led to the storage room. Nothing moved. The officers outside reported back. Building's empty. No recent signs of entry. "Do you still have them on the line?" I swallowed. "Yes." Mike raised an eyebrow at me and mouthed, "Ask where they are." I unmuted. "Caller, are you inside that building?" No answer. Just breathing. "Are you across the street?" Breathing. My chest felt tight. I tried something different. "Are you in this room?" The breathing stopped. Silence. I glanced at Mike, who was watching me carefully. I was about to repeat the question when the breathing started again, but now it was faster. Not panicked. Not random. It was like they were walking. With each inhale, a faint creak. With each exhale, a low thump. Like floorboards shifting under slow steps. I stood up without meaning to, headset still on. My eyes swept the room. Mike's radio crackled. "Dispatch, we're wrapping here." No contact. The breathing on the line didn't match my own anymore. It was independent now. Closer. I turned toward the glass windows at the front. Across the street, the patrol car was pulling away. And in the dark reflection of the glass, just behind my own shape, a shadow moved. I spun around. The room was empty. The breathing kept going. Mike's voice was low now. "Hang up. I can't," I said. My own voice sounded far away. I didn't even know if the headset mattered anymore. The sound was here, all around me. The line finally went dead at 1:59 a.m. No number. No trace history. Just a single location stamp. That building across the street. Mike said it was probably interference from the patrol radios bouncing off the old building. I nodded like I believed him. But I knew that sound hadn't come from across the street. It had been right behind me. After the second call, I started noticing the quiet more. It sounds stupid, noticing quiet, but the dispatch center isn't actually a quiet place. The equipment hums. Chairs creak. Someone's always typing or clearing their throat. But after that night, there were moments where it felt like all that dropped away. No hum. No keyboard clicks. Just air. Waiting. It was 3 nights later when it happened again. The shifts blur together when you work overnights. So I didn't even realize it was almost the exact same time. Just after 2 a.m., the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? The second I spoke, I knew. The breathing. This time I didn't waste words. Are you hurt? Breathing. Are you alone? Breathing. Mike wasn't in yet. He'd swapped start times with another lead. So it was just me and Dana, the other rookie, 2 desks over. She was deep in a call about a traffic stop gone wrong, headset tilted, fingers flying over her keyboard. I opened a trace request. The screen blinked, then froze. Error. Unable to initiate trace. I stared at it. That only happened when the connection wasn't going through the standard phone network. Landline. Cell. VoIP. Didn't matter. If it bypassed those, the system just didn't work. Which meant I wasn't on a normal call. I glanced at the top of the screen. No caller ID. No number. Not even unknown this time. Just blank space. The breathing in my headset felt thick, like it was pressing against my eardrums. I slid the volume down. It didn't help. The thing is, I was already holding my breath when I did it. It was still breathing. That hit me harder than it should have. I gotten used to it matching me, like that was the rule of whatever game this was, and now it was just doing its own thing. I listened. Slow inhale. Pause. Slow exhale. Each one was deep, full. The kind of breath you take when you're standing still, watching something. I unplugged the headset jack from my console. The line stayed open. I could still hear it. I froze, staring at the dangling cord. My pulse thudded in my neck. There was nothing feeding the sound to my ears now. No mic, no wire. But it was still there, perfectly clear just like before. I stood up, headset in hand. Dana glanced over, still talking to her caller. She frowned at me like, "What's wrong?" I shook my head and mouthed, "Nothing." I set the headset on my desk and stepped away. The sound didn't fade. It was following me, like the headset was inside my skull instead of on it. The more I focused on it, the more I realized it wasn't just in my ears. I could feel it faintly in my chest, like every inhale was pulling the air a little tighter, every exhale brushing the inside of my ribs. I went to the far end of the room, near the storage hallway, thinking maybe the distance from my desk would kill whatever signal was bleeding through. It didn't. If anything, it was louder. I put a hand against the wall, leaning on it. I didn't want to breathe, not because I was afraid it would match me, but because I was afraid it would stop. There was something about the rhythm that kept me anchored. If it broke, I had this awful sense that something else would happen. Something worse. I stood there counting. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Always the same. Then it changed. The inhale stretched. Longer and longer, until it felt like it would never end. I pressed my hand harder into the wall, like I could push myself away from it. My own lungs started to burn from holding back. And then the exhale came, a slow, shaking sigh that felt close. Closer than it had ever been. I turned my head toward the hallway. It was dark, except for the faint spill of light from the dispatch room. I knew, if I stepped into that dark, I'd find it. Or it would find me. Dana's voice cut in from across the room. "Hey, you good?" I blinked and looked back. She was off her call now, watching me with this uncertain half-smile. "Yeah," I said, but my voice sounded flat. "Just headset glitch." She tilted her head. "You're not wearing your headset." I didn't answer. I went back to my desk, forcing myself to sit down. I plugged the jack back in, put the headset on. Nothing. Dead silence. The call wasn't on the console anymore, but the breathing hadn't stopped. It was still in my ears, my chest, the back of my throat. I reached up and tapped the headset mic mute switch. Nothing changed. I thought about telling Dana, but the idea of describing it out loud made it feel more real. So I sat there, pretending to work, pretending I couldn't hear it. At 2:19 a.m., the sound shifted. Not louder, not faster. It moved. From my left ear to my right, from behind me to above me, like someone circling close enough to brush the hair by my temple if they wanted to. I closed my eyes and told myself I was imagining it. Then, a single word, not through the console, not through the headset, through me, closer. I ripped the headset off and shoved it into the desk drawer. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them against my knees to steady them. Dana didn't notice, or she pretended not to. The breathing didn't care. It stayed with me until the shift ended. It followed me into the locker room when I changed. It was with me in the car, on the drive home, hiding under the sound of the engine. It was in my apartment when I locked the door. And when I finally lay down in bed, I realized something I hadn't before. It didn't start when the calls came in. It didn't stop when they ended. The mic was always on. And it wasn't mine that I've heard a lot of strange calls working night shift in dispatch. Screams that cut off mid-sentence. Heavy breathing with no words. People mumbling nonsense, like they're halfway between a dream and death. But this one didn't sound like any of that. It came in at 2:14 a.m. The phones were dead quiet all night until that moment. Not a single traffic stop, not even a drunk guy locking himself out of his car. The kind of quiet where you start to believe nothing bad can happen at that hour. Then the line clicked, and for a second, I thought no one was there. Just the hiss of the line, that soft, empty static. And then breathing. Slow, careful, like whoever was on the other end didn't want you to hear them. 911, I said, my voice a little too loud in the stillness of the room. What's your emergency? More breathing. No words, but not panicked breathing. Not like someone running for their life. This was restrained, controlled. "Hello, can you hear me?" I asked again. A whisper slid through the line. They're right above me. I sat up straighter in my chair. The voice was male, thin, and strained. Maybe late 20s. "Okay," I said slowly. You said someone is above you? Crawling, he whispered. They're crawling above me. The air in the room suddenly felt heavier, and I glanced up at the ceiling without meaning to. All right, I'm going to send help. What's your address? He gave it, or at least I thought he did. His voice was shaking just enough that I had to repeat it back to him. It was an address I'd never heard before. Some rural-sounding road name. Haven Mill Extension. I typed it in. No result. I double-checked spelling. Still nothing. The map just sat there, blinking its little no location found prompt at me. Sir, can you repeat the address? He whispered it again, slower this time. Same result. I'm not finding it, I said carefully. Is there a nearby landmark? Something you can see? Silence for a moment, except for his breathing. Then, no windows down here. Down where? I asked. I think it's a basement. Something about the way he said it. Not I am in a basement, but I think it's a basement, made my stomach tighten. What happened? How did you get there? His voice trembled. I was walking home. Shortcut through the woods. Something was following me. Then I woke up here. I froze. You woke up there? Yes. I glanced at the clock on my monitor, then at the other dispatcher across the room. She was on another line, talking fast, completely unaware of the creeping dread in my headset. Sir, I'm going to keep you on the line. I need you to tell me everything you can about where you are. Anything at all. Above him, something moved. I didn't hear it clearly at first, just a faint shuffle, a weight shifting. His breathing sped up. Did you hear that? He whispered. What's above you? I told you. His voice cracked now. They're crawling. I pressed my headset tighter against my ear, listening. There was again. Not footsteps, too light for that. Not an animal, too slow. A drag. A pause. A drag. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you have anything you can defend yourself with? A stick, a pipe. No, he cut me off, his whisper rising in urgency. If I move, they'll hear me. The sound above him stopped. We both went silent. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then I heard it. Not the crawling, but something else. A sound that made my skin go cold. Breathing. Not his breathing. Another set. Slower, heavier. Directly above him. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of my own breathing echoing back in my headset. Sir, I'm going to stay with you. We'll get help to you as fast as we can. You can't, he whispered. You don't even know where I am. I didn't know what to say to that. Do you have a phone light? I finally asked. No, they took it. They? The line went quiet except for that faint, terrible breathing above him. I started running a reverse trace on the call. Normally, it's quick. A few seconds, and I'd have the GPS ping. This one took longer. Too long. When it finally came through, I just stared at the screen. It wasn't in the woods. It wasn't in some rural farmhouse. It was right across the street, from a dispatch center. A building we all knew, old, abandoned, boarded up years ago after a fire. Sir, I said, my voice barely holding steady. I think I know where you are. You don't, he whispered back. It's not right here. What do you mean? It's different inside. Bigger. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. Please, he whispered, don't let them hear me. The crawling started again. This time, it didn't stop above him. It moved. Slowly. Deliberately. And then, the call went dead. No click. No beep. Just silence. I sat there, staring at the dead line, my hand frozen on the mouse. Across the room, the other dispatcher hung up her call and looked over at me. You good? I didn't answer right away. My eyes drifted to the tall, black shape of the abandoned building through the front windows. The streetlight outside cast just enough glow to see its jagged roofline. All the windows were dark, but for a second, I thought I saw something move behind one of the boards that I didn't want to pick up the line. I know how that sounds. It's my job. I'm a dispatcher. I'm supposed to take every call, no matter what. But there's some numbers, some tones that just make your chest feel tight before you even hear a voice. This one was like that. The ID flashed unknown origin. Not blocked, not private, just something the system didn't recognize, which shouldn't be possible. Every number gets tagged. Every call has an origin point. Still, it was my turn in the rotation, so I slid the headset back on and answered. 911. What's your emergency? The whisper was there again. The same voice from the night before. She's right above me. No greeting. No explanation. Just that. For a second, I thought it was a prank. Maybe someone had recorded yesterday's call and was playing it back. But the sound wasn't exactly the same. It was live, quivering, and in the background, something scraped wood on wood. I tried to keep my voice even. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Where exactly are you right now? Silence. Then, barely audible. In the crawl space. She's following my voice. The scraping stopped. I could hear his breathing shift. Quick, shallow pulls like someone afraid to open their mouth too wide. My skin prickled. Okay, I said slowly. Let's get an address so I can send someone to you. He gave it without hesitation. Street, number, unit. I typed it into the system, and nothing came up. Not an error, not a mismatch, just nothing. The database didn't even recognize the street. I tried cross-referencing with mapping software. Still nothing. Sir, I'm not finding that location. Are you sure you're reading it correctly? I'm here, he whispered. I've been here since yesterday. That made me stop. You mean you haven't left since you called last night? There was a pause. Then his breathing picked up again. She's getting closer. And in the background, I heard it, a faint, deliberate, shifting noise, like knees and palms dragging over wooden boards. It was slow, careful, a sound that wasn't meant to be heard, but was. I pressed my ear tighter to the headset. Sir, do you have a phone light? Can you see her? No, he breathed. Don't want to. If I look, she'll know. I glanced around the dispatch floor. Everyone else was busy, heads down, typing, radios chattering. Nobody was watching me. I lowered my voice. Who is she? He didn't answer right away. Then, in that same terrified whisper, the one who lives above the ceiling. The words made my scalp tighten. I tried tracing the call. The line showed active, but the routing data was empty. No tower, no GPS ping. I'd never seen it before. The scraping came again. Louder. Closer. I could almost picture her. Knees digging into the wooden beams, hands dragging forward, face pressed down toward the boards as she listened. Is there any way out? I asked. He gave a short, desperate laugh. Only if she lets me. And then, for the first time, I heard something else, a second breathing. Higher pitched. Wet. It didn't come from his line. It came from above him. I froze. Sir, is that her? She's right over my head. He whispered, and I could hear the tremor in his voice. She moves when I talk. I can't. A loud thunk interrupted him, like a head hitting wood. He grunted in pain. Don't talk anymore, I said quickly. Stay silent. I'll keep the line open. I flagged the call for supervisor review, but protocol says without a verifiable address, no unit can be dispatched. I tried overriding the system. It wouldn't take it. For the next 2 minutes, I just listened. Every time his breathing quickened, hers did too. Every time he shifted slightly, the sound above him would follow, exactly matching his pace. I wanted to tell him to run, but I could hear it in his voice. He had nowhere to run to. And then something happened that made my stomach drop. His whisper got fainter, not because he was pulling away from the phone, but because something was muffling it. I heard wood creak, then a tearing sound. Sir, what's happening? She's opening it, he breathed. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Neither did he for a long, long moment. Then a low female voice, not quite a whisper, not quite speech, drifted through the headset. Not directed at me. Directed at him. Found you. The call went dead. I sat there, staring at the empty line. My hand wouldn't move from the mouse. Protocol said I should have logged it and moved on. But instead, I kept the number up on my screen. I tried calling it back. It rang once. Then nothing but faint static. And buried in that static was breathing that I didn't want to come in for the night shift. Not after last time. Not after the call about the man in the crawl space, whispering like he had something pressed to his mouth, like the air around him was stolen away. But dispatch doesn't stop for fear. We're short-staffed, and the supervisor made it clear, if I called in again, it'd be written up. So I came in. The room was the same as always, but it didn't feel the same. We keep our dispatch center dim at night, just the glow of the monitors and the low hum of the air system. There's this constant undercurrent of white noise, the kind you stop hearing after a while, but tonight I couldn't tune it out. Every hiss from the vents felt like it was breathing at me. It had been quiet for most of the shift. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you lean forward, waiting for something to happen. And then the call came in. It was him, the same man from before, the one who said someone was crawling above him. His voice came through raw, frayed, like he hadn't slept in days. "She's still here," he whispered. I swallowed before speaking. "Sir, can you confirm your location?" He gave the same address, word for word. I typed it into the system, knowing exactly what I'd see. No match found. Every time he spoke, there was this soft scrape in the background, like fingertips brushing against wood. Then just barely, the creak of something shifting weight. "She's been moving all night," he said. "Every time I close my eyes, she gets closer. She waits for me to talk." I didn't know what to say to that. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I tried again. "Sir, if you can, tell me exactly what you see. What room are you in?" "I can't see her. I can only hear her. She stays above the ceiling. But when I talk..." He stopped. The line went dead silent, except for the hiss of static. "She moves toward my voice." I heard it then, through my headset. A faint, deliberate thump above him. But then, I froze. I heard it again. Only this time, it wasn't just in my headset. It was in the room with me, above my ceiling. I pulled the headset slightly away from my ear, thinking I was imagining it. My heart was already hammering. The man spoke again, low and desperate. "Did you hear that? That's her. She's right above me now." My throat was dry. Yes, I heard it. Another knock. One above him, one above me. Not in sync, not echoing. Two separate knocks. I wanted to tell myself it was the building settling. It's an old place, and the ductwork sometimes pops in the winter. But these weren't random creaks. They were patterns. I tried to steady my voice. "Sir, is there any way for you to leave the room?" He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "If I leave, she'll follow me. Don't you get it? She's not in the crawl space. She's in the ceiling. It doesn't end." His words hit me harder than I expected. Another knock. Closer. Both here and there. I could hear the difference between them now. The ones over his head were softer, like fingers tapping wood. The ones over mine, heavier, almost like knuckles against metal. I reached for the mute button on my mic. I didn't want him to know I was hearing the same thing. I didn't want to feed whatever was happening. But muting didn't make it stop. Tap, tap, tap. I looked up. The ceiling tiles above the dispatch desks are those cheap white squares, the kind you can push aside to run cables. They looked normal, except one, right above my station. It had a faint, circular stain spreading from the center. I told myself it was water damage. It had to be. The man kept whispering into the phone, and I realized I wasn't breathing. "She's moving again. She's slow when she's listening. She doesn't need to rush." A bead of sweat slid down my back. There was a shift above me, faint but deliberate, like something repositioning itself on elbows and knees. "Sir," I said, my voice shaking now, "you need to stay calm. I'm going to try to get someone to you." "You won't find it," he said immediately. "I told you. You can't. I've been here for days. Weeks, maybe. Time doesn't work here." That stopped me. "What do you mean?" "She doesn't like me talking about it," he whispered quickly. "If I talk too much." There was a bang through his line. Not knock this time. A violent slam above him, so loud it made me flinch. And then, it happened above me too. Not as loud, not as forceful, but timed just enough to make my skin crawl. The hairs on my arm stood on end. He was crying now, almost silently. "She knows I'm talking to you. She's trying to hear you too." I didn't want to think about that. I didn't want to imagine some unseen shape pressing its ear against the ceiling, straining to listen to me. I typed a note into the system for the on-call supervisor, flagging the incident. But my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Another knock. This time, directly above where I sat. I couldn't help it. My eyes locked on that stained tile. It was subtle, but I swear it moved. Just a shiver, like something brushing against the underside of it. The man's voice dropped to almost nothing. "She's closer now. I can feel it." In the background of his call, I heard his breathing quicken and something else. A second set of breaths. Higher, lighter. They weren't coming from him. My own breathing grew ragged. The air in the dispatch room felt heavier, thicker, like the vents had shut off. I looked at the clock. 3:07 a.m. Funny thing, it had been 3:07 for a while. I must have missed it changing. Another knock. This one didn't stop. It dragged into a slow, rhythmic scrape, like nails pulling across wood. I didn't realize until then that I was gripping the edge of my desk, so hard my fingers hurt. The man suddenly gasped. "She's looking at me." My voice came out hoarse. "How do you know?" "I can feel it," he said. "Like she's right above my face. The wood between us doesn't matter." She's smiling. Something shifted in my peripheral vision, a shadow moving across the ceiling above me. I told myself it was just the low light, my eyes playing tricks. But then came the sound. Knock. Not above him. Not above me. From the tile, directly in front of me. The one I could reach if I stood up. I didn't move. I didn't want to move. The man's whisper was shaking now. "She's following your voice. Stop talking. Please." My throat tightened. I didn't want to believe him, but something in me did. I reached for the mute button again, and the knock came again. Harder. The tile above my desk flexed, just slightly, like something had pressed its weight against it. I froze with my finger hovering over the button. The man spoke again, rapid and panicked. "Don't mute. She doesn't like silence." I felt sick. "You just told me to stop talking." I thought he cut himself off. A soft, deliberate drag echoed through both our lines at once. Above him, above me. Perfectly in sync now. I don't remember what I said next. Maybe I didn't say anything at all. Maybe I just sat there, staring up at that tile, waiting for something to push it aside and peered down at me. But nothing happened. The scraping stopped. The man's breathing slowed. And then, without warning, the line went dead. No click, no tone, just gone. I stared at the call-ended notification, my hand still on the keyboard. My headset felt suddenly heavy on my head. The room was silent. No knocking, no scraping, just silence. I thought maybe it was over, until I heard it. Not above me, not above my desk. From the far corner of the dispatch room. A single, soft knock, followed by another. Closer, and another. Closer still. Coming toward me, that I used to think that silence meant safety. That if the world around you was quiet, it meant nothing bad was happening. That's not true. Sometimes the silence just means whatever's out there is listening. The officer's name was Mason. He wasn't new, but he had the kind of tired patience that comes with too many late shifts and not enough good calls. We'd worked together enough for me to know he didn't scare easily. The night this happened, he sounded scared. It started with his voice in my headset. Not panicked, not yelling, just clipped. Controlled. "Dispatch. I'm in the building now. No sign of entry. Going to check the top floor." The building was an old apartment complex on 11th and Warren. Or it used to be. The place had been partially condemned after a fire years ago. The top 3 floors were gutted. No tenants. No power. At least, that's what the city record said. The call we'd gotten 20 minutes earlier was strange. Someone whispering about the woman upstairs. No name. No number. Just a shaky voice repeating the same thing over and over. "She's right above me." No one was supposed to be in the building. But Mason volunteered to check it out. He didn't like leaving things hanging. I listened to his footsteps crunch over debris as he climbed the final set of stairs. My monitor showed his location pinging on the top floor. I remember saying, "All right, you're on 4. That's the highest one accessible, yeah?" "Yeah," he replied, a little out of breath. "Roof access is locked. No ladder. Nobody's above me." That's when we both heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Faint, but deliberate. Directly above him. I thought maybe it was an animal. Raccoon, squirrel, something like that. I started to say that, but Mason cut me off. "No, that's footsteps." He didn't say it with certainty, but more like he was trying to convince himself. The sound continued. Slow, dragging steps. They scraped like bare feet on concrete, moving across the ceiling in a line that followed him as he walked. I could hear him trying to place it, pausing, then moving again, listening for the sound to match his steps. And it did. Perfectly. "Mason," I said, "you're on the top floor. There's nothing above you but roof." He didn't answer right away, just breathing faint over the mic. Then dispatch. "I think there's another floor." I told him that wasn't possible. I'd pulled the building's original blueprints during the call. There was nothing above the 4th floor. No attic, no crawl space, nothing. But Mason kept moving. I heard the static hiss of his radio as he pushed open a door at the end of the hall. Inside, the footsteps stopped. "It's cold in here," he muttered. "Feels wrong." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but before I could, the sound returned. This time it was faster. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Circling overhead. Is it trying to find me? Mason's voice had that tightness people get when they're trying not to whisper. I didn't know what to say. My monitor still showed him on the top floor, but his radio picked up another sound. Light tapping against the mic. It wasn't him. Mason, where's your flashlight? I asked. Dead, he said. Batteries were fine 2 minutes ago. Something banged hard above him, so loud it made my headset pop. He swore under his breath. I'm going up. I told him there wasn't an up, but he'd already found something. His voice came through in short bursts as he moved around the room. There's a hatch. Painted over. Not in the hallway, inside the apartment. Small, but the mic picked up the sound of him dragging a chair across the floor. I tried to tell him to wait for backup, but he wasn't listening. You heard it, right? He said. You heard it moving up there. I said yes, but that didn't mean he should open it. The next sound was the chair creaking under his weight, then his gloves rubbing against old paint and wood. Jesus, he muttered. It's warm. I thought he meant the hatch. But then I realized his voice wasn't directed at me. He was talking to it. Hello. No response. Then, knock. 3 slow knocks from the other side. I froze in my chair. Mason didn't speak for almost 10 seconds. Finally, dispatch, it knows my name. I don't remember exactly what I said. Something like, how? Did it speak? He didn't answer that. Just said, I'm going to open it now. I wanted to yell at him to stop, but my mouth felt like it was full of sand. The only sound in the room was my own breathing in my headset. Then came the screech of nails, or something sharper, dragging across wood. Nope, nope, Mason whispered, dropping back to the floor. But the scratching didn't stop. It got faster, more frantic. Mason, get out of there, I said, finally finding my voice. He moved toward the door, but something followed him. Not above anymore, right inside the room. The sound was wrong, like knees and elbows bending the wrong way, scraping along the walls. I could hear his boots pounding down the hall. The thing was matching his speed. When he hit the stairwell door, there was a sharp slam over my headset, and the line went dead. I called for him. Nothing. Dispatch protocol says you stay calm, document everything, and wait for confirmation before escalating. But my hands were already shaking as I radioed for backup. By the time the other officers arrived, Mason was standing outside on the sidewalk, breathing hard, staring up at the top floor. When I asked what happened, he just shook his head and said, "It's still up there." They searched the entire building. Every room, every hallway. No one was inside. No hatch. No painted-over panel. Nothing but bare, blackened ceiling beams. I checked the blueprints again. For floors just like before. No attic. When I asked Mason later if he saw what it was, he said no. But he heard it, and it kept pace with him the whole way down until the very last step. That's when it stopped following him and started following me. That night, when I was locking up the dispatch center, I heard it. One slow scratch above my desk. And there's no floor above mine that I've been on night shift for 6 years. People think the worst part is the boredom. Sitting in a dimly lit room, listening to static and the occasional drunk guy who dialed the wrong number. It's not. The worst part is the regulars. See, boredom is safe. It's quiet. But the regulars, they're the ones who drag their darkness into the call center with them. And sometimes you can't shake it off. It started about 3 months ago. A man named Daniel. At first, I didn't know his name. He called around midnight, every time like clockwork. I'd answer, give my standard 911. What's your emergency? And he'd speak in this low, careful voice like he didn't want to wake someone in the next room. There's a woman in my yard. That was it. No screaming, no panic. Just flat. I asked the usual questions, description, what she was doing if she tried to break in. She's standing still, he said, looking at my window. When I asked for more details, he added something that stuck with me. She doesn't blink much. We sent out a patrol. They found nothing. The yard was empty. The next night, same time, same voice. She's back. I pulled up his file. Address matched. She's closer this time, he whispered. Halfway to the house. It wasn't a prank. I could hear his breathing, steady but too quick, like he was trying to keep calm. We sent another car. Same result. By the 5th night, I was already feeling a knot in my stomach when the clock hit 11:59. When the line lit up, I didn't even need to check the caller ID. She's almost to the porch now. I asked him to describe her again. He said she was tall, with hair so long it covered her shoulders, wearing a pale dress, maybe white, maybe light blue. He could never tell in the dark. She doesn't move when I look at her, he said. She just stands. That night, the responding officer called me directly after checking the property. His voice was uneasy. Yard's clear, but tell your guy to lock his doors. And maybe close his curtains. I thought it was weird advice, but I passed it along. Daniel didn't call for a week after that. I started to relax. Thought maybe it had stopped. Then, she came back. This time, his voice was shaking. She's on the porch. I could hear a faint tapping sound through the phone, like fingers against glass. Daniel whispered that she was standing by the living room window. She's looking right at me, he said, through the glass. The tapping grew louder. I told him to go to an interior room, lock the door, stay on the line. Our units got there in under 5 minutes. Nothing. By now, some of the other dispatchers were joking about it. The ghost girlfriend, they called her. Daniel's pale lady. But I wasn't laughing. I've been on the line with him too many nights, and something in his tone wasn't fear the way people usually sound. It was something heavier, like this was wearing him down. A week later, he called again. I could tell right away something was different. He was speaking faster, tripping over his words. She's inside. I froze. Daniel, where? In the hallway, he said. I woke up and she was there. I didn't see her come in. I asked if he could get out of the house. He said no. He didn't want to turn his back on her. Then he said something that still makes my skin crawl. She's smiling now. There was no sound on the line except for his breathing. Then he whispered, she knows I'm talking to you. I told him to get into a room and lock it now. He said, I can't move. For the first time since his call started, the line went dead before officers arrived. When they got there, they found Daniel sitting in his kitchen chair, wide awake. No signs of forced entry. No woman. He didn't make another call for almost a month. I thought maybe he'd moved or finally gotten some sleep. But then, a few nights ago, just after midnight, my phone lit up. It was Daniel. She's back, he said. His voice was slow, tired. She's not outside anymore. She's everywhere. I asked him what he meant. She's in the yard, the porch, the kitchen. Even when I close my eyes, I see her standing there. He said she didn't blink. She never blinked. And every time he looked away, she was closer, like she was stepping forward only when unseen. Do you see her too? He asked me suddenly. I didn't answer. Then I heard it, through the phone. A faint, steady tapping. It wasn't coming from his end. It was behind me, from the glass window of the dispatch center, that I knew his voice before I even saw the call Idaho. That same thin, jittery way of speaking. Like every word was a shiver trying to escape his mouth. It was 2:14 a.m. when the line lit up. And I didn't need to look. I just knew. 911. What's your emergency? The first sound wasn't words. It was breathing. Not fast, not ragged, just too close to the phone. Like it didn't even have the energy to hide the fear anymore. She's not outside anymore. My stomach sank before my brain caught up. I didn't ask him who he meant. I didn't need to. Okay, sir, is this? In the glass. His voice cracked. She's in the glass. Right behind me. For a second, I thought he meant a window. But then his whisper sharpened. I can see her in the reflection. She's in the reflection. She's here. I gripped the headset tighter. Sir, where are you right now? I'm in my kitchen, he whispered. I came down for water. She's in the sliding door. But the door's closed. She's not. She's not there when I turn around. Only in the glass. Something cold rolled through me. He was breathing faster now, words tumbling over each other. She's right behind me in it, like she's leaning in. Her face. He choked. It's closer than last night. Her cheek looks wrong, like it's bending. I kept my voice calm. That's just a reflection, okay? You might be. It's not me, he hissed. She's smiling. I heard the faint sound of something creaking on his end. Not a floorboard. Not something heavy. More like glass groaning underweight. You need to go to another room, I told him. No mirrors, no windows. Can you do that? He didn't answer right away. I thought maybe he'd hung up. But then, she's still smiling, he breathed. She's got her hand on my shoulder in the reflection. I froze. Sir, listen to me. Is there anyone else in the house? He almost laughed, but it wasn't humor. It was hollow. She's not in the house. She's in the glass. I turn around. I heard a quick shuffle of feet. I turn around. There's nothing. But when I face the door again, she's closer. My own reflection stared back at me in the black screen of my monitor. And for a second, I swear I imagined seeing someone over my own shoulder. Where are the lights in the room? I asked. Are they on? Yes. Good. Keep them on. Just walk backward. Don't look at her reflection again. Get somewhere safe. He made a soft noise, like the word no, but without any sound behind it. I heard him take a step, then another, and then a thud. Low, muffled, like a hand hitting glass. She's touching it now, he whispered. I saw it. Her handprint on the door. The glass pushed in. I wrote down his address with my free hand, pushing the location through to dispatch. Units were already rolling. She's not supposed to be here, he said softly. Last night she was in the yard. Tonight she's... He trailed off. What's she doing now? No answer. Sir? Talk to me. I heard him take the phone from his ear, like he was holding it out toward the sliding door. And then, the faintest sound. Not movement. Not a voice. Something wet, like lips parting. When he came back on the line, his voice was different. Not panicked. Not calm. Almost resigned. She's mouthing something to me. What is it? I don't know. The glass, it shakes when she does it. Like the words are hitting it. My monitor showed the unit getting closer. 2 minutes out. Stay on the phone. Keep moving toward another room. You can shut the door. He cut me off. She's not in the glass anymore. The way he said it, I think I stopped breathing. Where is she? Silence. And then, behind me, the phone went dead. By the time the officers arrived, the kitchen was empty. Sliding door locked from the inside. No footprints in the yard. No signs of forced entry. But there was one thing. A single handprint on the glass. Not clear like a normal print. Smudged. Streaked upward. As if whoever left it had slid their hand higher while leaning close. I saw the photo later. And maybe it was just the light, but the fingers looked too long. That was the last time he called. And for a while, I thought maybe it was over. Until 2 weeks later. I was at home, pouring myself a drink late at night. The kitchen was quiet. Lights on. Everything normal. I lifted my head to take a sip and caught sight of the sliding glass door in front of me. Nothing was there. Not in the yard. Not in the reflection. But for just a second, I swore I saw someone's lips moving in the glass. Even though my own mouth was still, that I don't know if I can explain the exact moment when my stomach turned cold that night. I've been working night shifts for years, long enough to know the strange, lonely rhythm of the dispatch center. How the fluorescent lights hum just loud enough to make you feel like you're underwater. How the computer screens flicker when no one's looking, like they're thinking on their own. And how, sometimes, the quiet isn't peaceful. It's heavy. It was around 3:12 a.m. when the phone rang again. The number on the screen was one I'd memorized by now, Tommy Hensley's. Tommy had been calling for weeks about the woman in his yard. Every night, a little closer to his house. Every night, standing perfectly still. Last night had been different. Last night, she wasn't in the yard anymore. He said she was in the glass. I almost didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of where this was heading. Still, I picked up. 911, what's your emergency? I could hear him breathing hard. His voice shook. She's closer. My chest tightened. Where are you right now? In the living room. Curtains closed. Lights off. But I can still see her. You said she's in a reflection? Yes. Not outside. Not in the yard. She's behind me. There's a rustle. Maybe him shifting. Maybe something else. Tommy, are you looking at her right now? A pause. Then, I can't stop. The way he said it, soft, almost ashamed, made the hairs on my neck lift. Okay, Tommy, I want you to move slowly. Don't turn around. Just describe her to me. He sucked in a shaky breath. Her face is pale. Not just skin pale white, like she's been pressed against ice for a long time. Her eyes, they don't move, but they're on me. She's smiling. I started to type it all into the call log, but then my hands froze on the keys when he said, she's wearing a dark blue sweater, like the one you're wearing. I wasn't wearing a uniform that night. I'd come in straight from home, a dark blue sweater, old and frayed at the cuffs. I looked down at myself. My pulse ticked in my ears. Tommy, how could you know that? Silence. Then, quietly, she's whispering. What's she saying? She's saying, turn around. I swallowed. My chair creaked as I shifted, not because I was moving closer to the phone, but because I was suddenly aware of the dispatch window in front of me. The window isn't really a window, not in the normal sense. It's a big pane of darkened glass, separating the call floor from the supervisor's office. At night, when the lights are low in here and off in there, it's like a mirror, and I could see my reflection in it. Only, it wasn't exactly my reflection. There was something faint, blurry, standing behind me in the glass. I told myself it was nothing, just a shadow from the monitor, just fatigue. But when I leaned forward, it leaned forward too, only it didn't match me perfectly. It moved a fraction slower. I reached for the phone headset again. Tommy, is she still there? He laughed, short, broken, not like amusement, but like he was running out of air. She's closer now. My mouth was dry. How close? I could see the top of her head in the corner of my eye. She's not in the reflection anymore. She's here. The line popped, a faint crackle of static. Tommy, listen to me. You need to leave the house right now. Don't look at her. Don't. A sharp sound, with scraping, a chair tipping over, cut me off. His breathing spiked. Then, she touched my shoulder. My own shoulders tensed so hard they ached. Without thinking, I glanced at the glass again. The thing behind me was sharper now, clearer. She was pale. Her hair was thin and stringy, clinging to her temples like she'd been underwater. And her eyes, God, her eyes were locked right on mine through the reflection. Not my reflection's eyes. Mine. She was staring at me. I froze. My body screamed to turn around, but I couldn't. I couldn't even breathe right. Tommy's voice came through the line, shaking and low. She's looking at you now. I didn't ask how he knew. I didn't want to. Something cold pricked at the back of my neck, the way static feels before a lightning strike. Tommy, I whispered, I think I see her too. The line went quiet. For a long moment, all I heard was the faint hum of the lights and my own heartbeat pounding against my ribs. Then, in the faintest voice, don't blink. I try not to. I really did. My eyes burned and watered, but I held them open. I told myself if I just didn't blink, she couldn't get closer. But that's when I saw it. Not in the glass. In the faint, dark reflection on my computer screen. She was closer. Her face was almost touching the side of mine, angled so her mouth was near my ear. And she was smiling. My vision blurred from the strain. I blinked. The glass was empty. But in that half second between closing and opening my eyes, I swear I felt her hair brush my cheek. The phone line crackled again. Then it went dead. I called out, Tommy, but there was no answer. I sat there for I don't know how long, staring at my own reflection, waiting for her to come back. She didn't. Not then. It's been 3 nights since that call. Tommy's number is disconnected. His house was found locked, lights off, no sign of him anywhere. I told myself it was over, that she was gone with him. But last night, when I came in for my shift, the supervisor's office was dark just like always. I saw my reflection in the dispatch window. And behind it, a shape, closer than before. She's not smiling anymore. She looks patient that I've been working dispatch for almost 6 years. Long enough to stop getting shaken up by most calls. Or, I thought so. It was a Tuesday night. Slow shift, fluorescent lights buzzing above my desk. The room smelling faintly of burnt coffee. My partner, Carla, was scrolling through her phone on the other side of the room. The radio chatter was low. I remember thinking how quiet it felt, like the kind of quiet that only happens before something bad. When the phone rang, I slipped on my headset automatically, hitting the green button. 911, what's your emergency? Silence. I was about to repeat myself when a voice came through. But it wasn't just any voice. It was my voice. Hello, the caller said. It was the same tone, same cadence, same slight rasp at the end of words I get when I've been drinking too much coffee. This is weird, I said, trying to stay professional. Can you state your emergency? The voice on the other end chuckled softly, like they'd been expecting me to notice. You, the voice said. I almost laughed. Almost. But there was no humor in the way they said it. It wasn't a joke or a prank call. "What's your name?" I asked, even though my gut already knew what they'd say. "Your name," they replied. "Same as yours. Same spelling. Same everything. I'm the real one. And you're not." A little coldness slid up the back of my neck. Prank calls happen all the time. Kids, drunks, lonely people. But this wasn't any of those. The line was crystal clear. No static, no background noise. And when they spoke, there was this perfect mirroring, the way I pause, the way I emphasize certain words. I could hear my own breathing pattern in theirs. "Where are you calling from?" I asked. "You already know," they said. "You're looking at it." I glanced up, reflexively, at the row of monitors in front of me. Each one showed live feeds from different corners of the dispatch center. Front desk, hallways, parking lot. All empty. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice even. They didn't answer that. Instead, they said, "Do you remember the first call you ever took here?" 3 years, 7 months, and 19 days ago. The kid in the trailer who said someone was in his closet. My mouth went dry. That was my first call. My very first night alone on the board. No one else knew the details but me and the report file. And the caller, whoever they were, told it exactly right. "You listened to him die," they added softer now, before the line went dead. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying not to sound shaken. "I told you," the voice whispered. "I'm you. And I think you've been living my life for long enough." I looked over at Carla. She was still staring at her phone, completely oblivious. I covered my mouthpiece. "Hey," I called to her. She looked up. "You hear this call?" I asked. She frowned. "What call?" My stomach dropped. I turned back to the screen. The call timer was running, a perfect little red counter in the corner, but Carla hadn't heard a thing. "You're not on the board," she said slowly, like I was the one acting strange. Lines clear, but I was on the board. The timer kept ticking, and my voice, was still breathing in my ear. "Don't tell her about me," it said. My hands felt numb. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. "You already know," it replied. "Switch." "Switch what?" "Places. You've been answering my calls, taking my life, my voice, my memories. Don't you feel it? Like you've been misplaced." I felt something stir in me, then, not recognition exactly, but the sense that maybe I had been feeling off for a while now, forgetting little things. A street name here, a face there. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass wall of the dispatch booth, and, for a split second, it felt like someone else was looking back. The voice spoke again. "You're not even the first," it said. I swallowed hard. What does that mean? Static, sharp, loud, filled my ear for just a second. Then, they don't last long. I froze. "Ooh," I whispered. "You'll see. Just look to your left." I didn't want to, but my eyes shifted anyway. Through the glass divider that separated me from the hallway, I could see my reflection faintly. But behind that, just barely visible in the glare, there was something, not a person exactly, more like a smear of darkness in the shape of one, standing just behind my reflection's shoulder. I blinked and it was gone. "You felt that, didn't you?" the voice murmured. I ripped off my headset and stood up so fast my chair rolled back into the wall. Carla jumped. "What the hell's wrong with you?" I glanced at my screen. The call timer was gone. The line was dead. But in my headset, lying there on the desk, I could still hear faint breathing. I didn't take another call for the rest of the shift. I let Carla handle them, pretending I was updating reports. I didn't tell her what happened. I didn't know how. When I got home that night, I left my radio off. I sat in the dark for a long time, just listening to my apartment settle. The hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, the occasional pop of the baseboard heaters. And then my phone rang. Not my work phone. My personal cell. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but my thumb betrayed me. "Hello," I said, and in that same voice, my voice, the caller said, "You shouldn't have hung up." I didn't go home after that first call. I should have. Any normal person would have logged it, passed it off to someone higher up, maybe even left the building and pretended it never happened. But I stayed. I told myself it was just curiosity, that I wanted to see if it happened again, but deep down I knew it was more than that. I needed to hear that voice again, even if it terrified me. It was like I'd been hooked. Dispatch at night has its own rhythm. The phones ring in waves, quiet stretches broken by sudden bursts of chaos. By the time you settle into the silence, you start hearing little things. A clicking from one of the old routers. The hum of the fluorescent lights. The faint whir of the ceiling fans. You sort of notice how big the room feels and how empty it is at this hour. I had the whole place to myself. My supervisor, Jordan, was upstairs in the break room. He liked to rest his eyes after midnight, which meant I could expect him back in an hour or so, still smelling like vending machine coffee. I kept glancing at line 3. That was the one from earlier, the one that lit up with my own voice on the other end. Every time I saw it sitting there dark and silent, my stomach twisted. I told myself, if it happens again, I'm not answering. The computer clock read 12:42 a.m. when the first strange thing happened. The screen on the switchboard flickered. It wasn't a power issue. The light stayed steady, but the digital interface jumped like it skipped a frame. All the active calls flashed red for a split second, even the ones on hold. And then line 3 lit up. It wasn't ringing yet. It just glowed, a solid green. I froze. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, not touching the headset. I waited for the usual chime. It never came. Instead, I heard breathing in my earpiece. I hadn't even answered. Why didn't you pick up? The voice was mine. My own tone, my own pitch. The same steady, dispatch train calm I practiced for years, except it wasn't coming from me. I didn't answer. I whispered. Yes, you did. I yanked the headset slightly off my ear, like that would change anything. The line was still open. You don't get to pretend this didn't happen, it continued. You heard me last time. I told you who I am. I swallowed. My throat was dry. You said you're me. No, the voice chuckled softly. I am the real you. You're just the one filling in. A stand-in. A copy. There was no way to respond to that without feeling insane, so I stayed quiet. It didn't seem to care. I'm only calling to warn you, it said. The next call you answer will be your last. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in. What do you mean, last? I asked, hating how my voice trembled. You'll see, if you pick up. And then the line went dead. I sat there, staring at the dark switchboard. I tried to tell myself this was a prank. Someone had recorded my voice somehow, maybe one of the guys in IT messing with me. But that theory dissolved the second I thought about the first call and how live it had felt. I didn't log it. I didn't even write it down. I just waited. Minutes passed. A regular call came through, a drunk driver report, and I took it, half expecting something awful to happen. Nothing did. I gave the location to the nearest unit and moved on. My hands were shaking, but the world went on like nothing had happened. For a while, I started to believe maybe it was over. But then, 1:03 a.m., all the lines went dark at once. The ones on hold, the ones active gone. I'd never seen that happen before. A second later, one light came back on. Line 3. And it was ringing. My chest tightened. I told myself I wouldn't answer it. I promised myself I wouldn't. But dispatch training is muscle memory. When a line rings, you pick it up. It's automatic. I didn't even realize I'd grabbed my headset until I heard the click. 911. What's your emergent? I stopped. There was silence. And then my own voice right on top of mine. Don't say a word. My mouth went dry. I told you. The next one is your last. And now it's here. The line popped. Not a disconnect. More like interference. And then I heard another sound underneath the static. A faint ringing. Not from the board in front of me. From somewhere behind me. I turned slowly. Across the room, against the far wall, was the old backup switchboard. It hadn't been used in years, except for monthly maintenance checks. But now its dusty little screen was glowing, and its receiver was slightly off the hook, hanging crooked. And I swear it was ringing. I stood, every nerve screaming at me to not go over there. But my feet didn't listen. The sound was low, muffled, almost polite, but constant. When I reached it, I saw something I'll never forget. The caller ID screen, the old green block letters, didn't have a number. It had my name, not my full name, not dispatch operator, just my first name, and underneath it, answer me. The ringing stopped the moment I touched the receiver. Silence. Then 2 breaths in the line. One mine, one identical. Do you feel it yet? The voice whispered. The edges closing in? The part of you that doesn't belong. I want to hang up. I wanted to smash the phone against the wall. But I couldn't move. You've been doing my job, it continued. And you've done it badly. That's why I have to come back. My voice finally cracked. Who are you? You're asking the wrong question, it said almost kindly. Ask where you are. Before I could speak, every phone in the room, every single one, old and new, lit up at once. Not ringing, just glowing. And then, in perfect unison, they all started to ring. Not in the real, chaotic way phones do. This was synchronized. Precise. Too precise. I dropped the receiver and backed away. The main board was pulsing with calls. All the IDs said the same thing, me. And I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach turn, that one of those was the call. The one they'd warned me about. I also knew I was going to answer it. I don't know why. My hand hovered over line 3. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then, the ringing stopped. All of it. Every light went dark. The room was silent again, except for my breathing. I sat there for the rest of the shift, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. Not that night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd already crossed some invisible line. And the next time it rang, I wouldn't have a choice that I didn't think I'd ever see the end of that shift. After the last call, the one with him, me, whatever that voice was, my hands had stayed shaking for nearly an hour. I kept telling myself I just needed to push through. A few more hours, and I'd be home. A shower. A locked door. My bed. I clung to that image like it could carry me across a chasm. But deep down, I knew I wasn't getting out untouched. The switchboard glowed in the half-light, all those little red and green blips, like eyes blinking in the dark. The building was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint clatter of another dispatcher's keyboard across the room. It should have felt normal. It didn't. Every sound seemed to have shadow now. Every movement, an echo I couldn't trace. I tried to keep my headset resting around my neck, not actually on my ears, unless a line lit up. A childish trick, like somehow keeping one ear free would keep him from getting in again. But when you work dispatch, you don't get to avoid the calls. You answer. That's the job. And that's the trap. It was 2:37 a.m. when both lines lit up at once. Line 1, line 3. Both steady, urgent. Both wrong somehow. I froze, my finger hovering over the panel. Normally you take the one that comes in first, but these were too close to call, maybe even simultaneous. And then, through the muffled static in my headset, I heard it. Not a voice yet, just breathing. 2 different rhythms. One on each line. One slow and deep, the other shallow and quick. I don't know why, but that was worse than if they'd both started speaking at once. I clicked into line 1. 911, what's your... Don't answer the other one. It was me. My voice, same tone, same cadence like I'd just spoken into a mirror and heard the reflection talk back. Cut off. Hang it up now. If you take it, you're done. Do you hear me? I didn't respond. I couldn't. I know you think this is the same as last time. The voice went on, calm, steady. It's not. That one isn't me. It's them. You can't let it talk to you. Hang up before it's too late. My stomach clenched. Who is this? It was all I could manage. You know who I am. You know. And then, quieter, almost a whisper. I'm you. The real you. And the other one's going to take your place if you let it speak. Something inside me twisted hard, like a hand squeezing my insides. Because even as every part of me wanted to slam the line dead, there was this horrible pull, this urge to check. I glanced at the other light on the board. Line 3 still blinked, steady, patient. I can prove it, my voice said in my ear. Do you remember the first call you ever took? The old man on County Road 9? He said there was someone at his window, but no one was there. You told him to stay inside, but you didn't send anyone. You didn't log it. I felt my throat close. That was a thing I hadn't told a soul. Not a single soul. How do you? Because I was there. I'm you. A pause. Now hang up before it. The other line clicked in by itself. I swear to God, I didn't touch it. Line 3 came alive in my other ear. And it was my voice again. Don't listen to her. Firm, certain. She's lying. She's not you. She's not even human anymore. I yanked the headset off, heart pounding. The voices bled faintly from the earpiece, both of them talking now, overlapping, each warning me about the other. The worst part wasn't that they sounded exactly like me. The worst part was that they didn't sound identical. They were drifting. One version of my voice was starting to sound tired, frayed at the edges, like she hadn't slept in years. The other was sharper, almost too sharp, each word cut like glass. I didn't want either of them in my head. But I also knew the rule. If you leave a line open too long without taking it, it locks into the system. And then you're stuck with it until one side disconnects. I put the headset back on, trying to keep my breathing steady. Line 1, she'll tell you things. Personal things. Things she has no right to know. Don't believe them. Don't ever believe them. Line 3, she's stalling. Every second you keep her on, she's draining you. You can feel it, can't you? That heaviness in your chest. I did feel it. God help me, I did. I gripped the desk, so hard my fingers ached. Why don't you hang up? I said, voice trembling. Neither did. Line 1. She doesn't even remember the first night shift. I do. I remember the man in the red coat who came to the lobby and stared at the door for an hour. You thought he was drunk. He wasn't. Line 3. Ask her about your mother's voicemail. The one she left you at 3:12 a.m. last winter. The one you never played. She's heard it. She's not supposed to have. I almost tore the headset off again, but something kept me there. I wanted to hear what they'd say next. Line 1. If you hang up on me, you won't wake up tomorrow. Do you understand? Line 3. If you hang up on me, you'll wish you hadn't woken up. The switchboard lights were starting to blur, like I couldn't focus my eyes properly. My mouth was dry. My pulse thudded in my ears. What do you want from me? I finally asked. Both lines answer at the same time. To live. My hand hovered over line 1's disconnect. Then line 3's. It was impossible. There was no right choice. If either was telling the truth, the other was a death sentence. If both were lying, I didn't want to think about what that meant. Then line 1 went quiet. No breath. No static. Just gone. For maybe 3 seconds. And then she came back, voice softer, almost pleading. You're tired, aren't you? Just let it go. Let me take the calls for a while. You'll rest. You won't even notice the change. Line 3 hissed, low and urgent. Don't let her in. She's already halfway there. You give her that inch, you won't come back. I realized my left hand was trembling hard enough to shake the whole headset cord. My right hand was steady, almost too steady, like it didn't belong to me. And that's when it hit me. What if one of them already had a piece of me? The room felt smaller. My breath sounded too loud in my own head. Line 1, please, just trust me. I've been trying to get back to you for so long. Line 3, it's not her. It's not her. Cut it now. Cut it. Somewhere in the back of the room, a chair scraped against the floor. I jerked my head up. The other dispatcher, Harris, was gone. His desk empty. No sound of a door. I looked at the switchboard again. Both lines still live. Both versions of my voice waiting for me to choose who dies. I wish I could tell you I figured out which was real. That there was some trick, some giveaway, something only I could know. But there wasn't. There was just me, and the choice. The lights blinked in perfect rhythm. And I'd worked the dispatch desk long enough to know when a call was going to stick with me. Sometimes it's the voice. Sometimes it's the silence. And sometimes it's what you hear in between. That night started quiet. Too quiet. No Friday night drunks. No highway pileups. Not even a noise complaint. Just the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional crackle from the police scanner. Then, at 12:42 a.m., the line lit up. I put my headset on and gave the same calm, practiced greeting I always do. 911, what's your emergency? What came back wasn't calm. It wasn't even coherent at first. It was just screaming. It took a few seconds before I could even pick out words between the ragged breaths. They're out there. They're out there. Oh God, they're right there. Sir, I need you to slow down. Who's out there? I kept my voice low, steady. That's how you do it. You stay a rock so they don't crumble completely. Shadows, he gasped. They're moving. No lights. No power. Nothing. He cut himself off with another sharp inhale. They're closer now. Something about the way he said shadows put a knot in my stomach. Not people. Not animals. Just shadows. I pulled up the map grid and checked the caller ID. The screen showed a location on County Line Road. Miles of farmland and scattered houses. No streetlights. No cell towers for half a mile in either direction. Sir, are you in your home? Yes, but his voice cracked. The windows don't stop them. They slide right over. I try to keep the skepticism out of my tone. I've had my share of hallucination calls, drugs, exhaustion, mental breaks. But the thing is, his fear didn't sound like a trip or an act. It sounded cold, heavy, like he'd already accepted something awful. Okay, I'm going to get help out to you. What's your name? Grant. Grant Holloway. Please. His voice dropped to a whisper. Don't hang up. They're moving again. I flagged the call as high priority, tagged local deputies, and sent the location ping. The problem was the ping came back inconsistent, like it was moving, drifting 100 feet north, then 40 feet south, then disappearing altogether. I'd seen bad signals before, but never like that. Grant, can you lock your doors and stay away from windows? They're not coming through doors, he whispered. They just find a way in. I heard a faint tap, tap, tap through his phone. It didn't sound like knuckles on glass. It sounded softer, like fingertips brushing fabric. Grant, is someone inside with you right now? He didn't answer. I heard him breathing hard, then whispering to himself. Not prayers, not even words. Just a low, frantic murmur. Then silence. Grant, static hissed through the line, like wind in a microphone. I thought we dropped the call, but then I heard him again, farther from the phone now. They can't find me if I don't move. I opened my mouth to respond when another voice, low, flat, and completely wrong, came through. It wasn't a voice I recognized. It wasn't even human in the way voices should be. There was no breath behind it, no rise or fall, just a perfect, steady tone. Turn off your light. For a moment, I thought it was someone on my end, feedback from another channel. But it came from his phone. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, frozen, while the voice repeated itself. Turn off your light. Then Grant's voice came back, shaking. I didn't turn it on. Something banged in the background. Not loud, but heavy, like furniture shifting across the floor. Grant, listen to me, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Deputies are on the way. You just need to stay hidden and stay on the line with me. Okay? His breathing picked up again. They're at the stairs. I pictured the house, small 2-story farmhouse, probably with a narrow staircase straight from the front door. No neighbors close enough to hear anything. And then the line clicked. Not hung up, just split. I could still hear him breathing, but over it, faint and warping, was that other voice again. This time it didn't speak to him. It spoke to me. You're in the light too. My hand hovered over the console's disconnect button, but I couldn't press it. Every instinct I had was telling me that hanging up would be worse. Much worse. Grant, I said slowly. Can you still hear me? Yes, he whispered. But it's different now. You're here. I didn't understand what he meant. Something shifted in the background. The creak of weight on old floorboards. They're inside, he said, barely audible. But they're not looking at me anymore. The static swelled, almost drowning him out. In it, I swore I heard shapes, like the suggestion of footsteps, only bent and broken. Grant, focus on my voice. Tell me what room you're in. He didn't answer right away. Then, it doesn't matter. It's too dark now. That was the last thing he said. The line didn't go dead. It just faded. His breathing dissolved into static, the static into nothing. My console still showed the call active, but there was no sound. No one on the other end. I kept the headset on for another 4 minutes before I forced myself to hang up. The deputies reached the property 22 minutes later. They found the front door wide open. No sign of forced entry. No Grant Holloway. But they did find his phone. It was lying in the center of the living room floor. The deputies said it was strange. Every room in the house was pitch black, except for the living room. That one had a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, still on. Only, there was no power in the entire county line grid that night. I'll listen to the recording of the call later, trying to figure out if I'd misheard. But the voice, the one that wasn't his, it was still there. Clearer than I remembered. And when it said, "You're in the light too," I swear I could hear it smiling that I kept my headset on after the line went dead, just staring at the soft red glow of the disconnected indicator. My fingers hovered over the keys, waiting for the sound of him coming back, for another flicker of life in that dead frequency. But nothing. Just the faint hiss of an open channel. Normally, when a call drops, it's sharp, clean, a quick click in your ear. This was different. It was as if the line wasn't gone. It was just breathing differently, slower, The last thing he'd said before the static swallowed him was, "They're right outside." And now, sitting alone in the dim light of my dispatch booth, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the they in someone else's story. I tapped the receive key, speaking into the mic. "Sir, are you still there?" The static thickened for a moment. I swear I could feel it, like a blanket being pulled over my head. And then under it, something, not quite a word, not quite a breath. It made my skin crawl in that strange way, like a cold drop of water sliding down your back, even though nothing's there. I didn't hang up. I couldn't. Protocol says you keep the line open during an active emergency until it's confirmed resolved. I told myself that's why I stayed, why I leaned forward in my chair and pressed the headset tighter to my ear. But deep down, I knew it wasn't duty keeping me there. It was curiosity, that dangerous, stupid curiosity that makes you look out the window when you hear a noise in the dark. I glanced at the clock. 2:11 a.m. County Line Road was way out past the towers, rural dead zone. Old houses, lots of farmland. No cell service except through those ancient landlines half the county still clings to. The power outage tonight was already on the news feed. A blown transformer somewhere near Old Mill. But the man's voice, the panic in it, didn't sound like someone upset about no lights. It sounded like someone who could see something he wasn't supposed to. The static thinned for a second, and then a voice, not loud, not sudden, but so clear it cut right through me, whispered, "They're walking toward you." I froze. It wasn't his voice. It was softer. Female, maybe. The tone was wrong, like the words weren't being spoken so much as pushed through the line. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. The static swallowed her again. I tried to trace the call, but the system just blinked back an empty ID. I could have just logged it, marked it as interrupted call, no reconnection. That's what most of the night shift would have done. But the truth is, my shift had been dead quiet until this. And something about that whisper didn't feel random. It felt personal. I patched into the sheriff's line. Got a rural distress from County Line. I told him. Dropped mid-call. Might have been an outage, but the caller mentioned something outside. And there was another voice. There was a pause. The sheriff asked me for details. I left the whisper part out. I didn't want him thinking I was just tired and hearing things. Within a few minutes, a deputy, Carter, was heading out there. I stayed on the line. The static was still there, steady, patient. I spoke into it a few more times. "Sir, if you can hear me, stay inside. Help is on the way." Nothing. When Carter radioed and the heat reached the turnoff, the static surged again. And under it, I heard something faint like gravel shifting. I thought maybe it was Carter's mic picking up road noise, but then I remembered his radio line wasn't patched through to this channel. This was coming from inside the dead call. I gripped the desk, listening harder. Shuffle. Crunch. Shuffle. Slow. Deliberate. Not the pace of someone walking to their front door. The pace of something pacing. Carter came back on the radio a few minutes later. "Dispatch, I'm at the address. House is dark, front door's shut. No sign of movement." Static roared in my ear, louder than before. And then, buried in it, the whisper again. "They're closer now." I flinched so hard I almost yanked the headset off. I typed a note to Carter, my hands shaking. "Approach with caution." Caller reported movement outside. I waited for him to respond. Silence. And then his voice, faint and fuzzy. "Dispatch, the front door's open." I hadn't heard it open. Carter stepped inside. His boots thudded on wooden flooring. Then he stopped. "Dispatch, the house is empty." I stared at my screen. "That can't be right," I said without thinking. I was on the phone with him less than 10 minutes ago. Carter didn't answer. The static softened again, like someone turning down the volume, but the pacing sound didn't stop. It was louder now, circling in my head. "They're right behind you," the whisper breathed. I sat up, so fast my chair rolled back into the wall. My eyes darted to the glass door at the end of the hall, the one leading to the parking lot. Nothing. Just darkness and the faint orange glow of the emergency generator light. I told myself it was just interference. Old lines, bad weather, maybe a crosstalk bleed from another frequency. But I knew that was a lie. The voice wasn't random static. It was talking to me. And if it was telling the truth, it wasn't talking about Carter at all. It was talking about where I was sitting. I didn't even realize my hand was still on the receive key until the static shifted again, almost like someone was breathing in through the headset. Dispatch. Carter's voice cut in. I'm checking the back room. There's a phone off the hook in here. The static swallowed his voice whole. Then, faint, almost sweet, the whisper said, Don't let him see you. I always thought dispatch centers felt too bright, too sterile. Even at 3 in the morning, the place was lit like an operating room. Overhead fluorescents buzzing faintly, screens glowing in cold blues and greens. I guess it was supposed to keep us alert, stop us from nodding off mid-shift. But that night, when the lights went out, I realized how much those lights had been holding the dark back. It happened without warning. 1 second, I was staring at the CAD screen, trying to make sense of the half-transcribed call from the man on County Line Road. The next, every light, every monitor, even the low hum of the ventilation gone. No pop, no flicker, just silence. At first, I thought the power had only cut in the room. But then I looked toward the far windows, the ones that faced the street outside, and saw nothing. No glow from the street lamps, no headlights sweeping by. The whole town was dark. I don't know if you've ever really been in total darkness. Not just dim light, not just a power outage in the city where you can still see the orange haze from blocks away. I'm talking about nothing. A black that presses against your eyes like it wants to get in. For a few seconds, I just sat there, trying to get my bearings. I could hear the other dispatchers shifting in their chairs, muttering. One of them laughed, a quick, nervous thing, and said something about the backup generator. But the backup never kicked on. Instead, the radio on my desk cracked once, loud in the stillness. It wasn't a normal transmission, no ID ping, no dispatch tone, just a burst of static that hissed in the dark. Then nothing again. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I think I reached for my flashlight, but my hands felt clumsy, like they weren't quite mine. It was in my drawer, right where it always was, but opening the drawer sounded too loud, like the noise was carrying farther than it should. I switched it on, and the narrow beam cut across the room. For a split second, I felt better. But then something moved, not in the light, in the dark, at the far side of the room. Just at the edge where the flashlight didn't quite reach, I thought I saw a shape. Not a person. Not exactly. It was too tall, too thin, like it had been stretched. I swung the beam toward it, but there was nothing there. Just the empty bank of consoles and chairs. The other dispatchers were whispering now. I couldn't make out their words. My eyes kept going to the windows. That's when I realized there were shapes outside, slowly passing. Their movement was strange. Not like people walking, not like they were moving toward a destination. Just drifting, sliding along the glass. No flashlights, no cell phone glow, just black on black outlines. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or, well, the lack of it. That my eyes were inventing movement because they had nothing to focus on. Then one of them stopped, right at my window. I don't know how I could tell it was looking at me. I couldn't see a face, not really. But I felt it, the same way you can feel someone staring at you from across a room. My flashlight beam shook as I tried to angle it toward the glass. The second the light touched it, the shape slid away, quick like water running off. And that was worse, because if it could move like that, it meant it wasn't just floating there. It was choosing. The radio hissed again. This time, I heard the voice. Low, broken up by static. Don't look. That was it. Just those words. I froze, holding my breath like it would help me hear better. But nothing else came through. The rest of the shift was a blur of half-light and shadows. None of the phones worked. The only sounds were the faint creak of chairs and the slow scrape of those shapes passing the glass. When the lights came back on, hours later, all at once like nothing had happened, everyone acted like it was just a weird outage. The supervisors blamed the grid. The other dispatchers laughed it off. But know what I saw, and I know what I felt. The man on County Line Road had been screaming about shadows moving outside. And for those hours in the dark, I think I understood exactly what he meant. When the lights came back, it was almost wrong. Too sudden, too sharp. 1 second, I was standing there with my back against the wall, hands pressed against the cold drywall like it could somehow hold me up. The next, fluorescent tubes snapped awake overhead with that ugly, buzzing glow. My eyes burned, trying to adjust. For a moment, I didn't even breathe. I was just staring at the console in front of me, hoping that all the madness from the last 20 minutes had just been in my head, that the darkness had played tricks on me. But then I saw the logs. I don't know if anyone outside dispatch has ever looked at the live call log before. It's this dull, gray screen, lines of text scrolling down as calls come in, timestamps, numbers, call durations. Normally, it's constant. Even in a small county like ours, it never stops. Drunk drivers, lost hikers, angry neighbors. Somebody's always dialing 911. But now, the screen was empty. From the minute the lights had gone out until the moment they came back on, there was nothing. Not a single call. No unanswered rings. No failed connections. Just silence, recorded as if nothing had happened. I stared so long that my eyes started to sting. That couldn't be right. I had been here. I had heard the phones ring in the dark. I had heard voices, whispering, muttering, breathing. I had picked up calls, goddamn it. I remembered the trembling sound of that woman saying, "They're still outside." I remembered her voice breaking. I remembered the line going dead. So why wasn't any of it here? Systems probably glitched from the outage, Mark said. I hadn't even noticed him standing behind me until he spoke. His voice made me jump, but when I turned to look at him, something fell off. Mark didn't look like himself. His uniform was wrinkled, damp along the collar. His skin was pale, but not in a sick way. More like all the color had just been drained. His eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. "You saw the shapes too, right?" I asked. He blinked slow. "What shapes?" I opened my mouth to say the ones outside the window, but my throat tightened up. I didn't want to say it out loud. Not yet. Instead, I just looked toward the far wall where the wide glass pane faced the parking lot. They weren't gone. In the harsh fluorescent light, it was harder to see them, but they were there. Tall, stretched out silhouettes, standing too still. The kind of stillness that makes you realize just how much people are always moving, even when they're trying to stand still. Breathing, shifting their weight, tilting their head. These didn't. They looked wrong in the light, like shadows from a street lamp, except there were no street lamps outside. Just the pale beam of the security flood over the lot, and even that didn't touch them right. It was like they absorbed it. I couldn't tell how many there were. 4? 5? Maybe more. "They've been there since the blackout," I whispered. Mark glanced at the window, but only for a second, like he was afraid of locking eyes. "Probably just locals messing with us. Happens sometimes after a storm." "It wasn't storming," I said. His jaw tightened. "Still could be kids. Or drunks. Let's not overthink it." "Overthink it?" I almost laughed. Overthinking was for things like, maybe my boyfriend's texts sound distant. Maybe I left the oven on. This wasn't overthinking. This was the part of your brain that screams run while your legs lock up like concrete. I looked back at the window. One of the shapes was closer now. I don't mean I saw it move. One moment it was near the far curb. The next it was maybe 20 feet from the glass. My stomach twisted. Mark didn't react. I turned back to the console and ran the log search again, thinking maybe the system just hadn't loaded. Same result. No calls during the outage. No trace of any voices. And yet, the sound of the outage was still in my ears. The static. The muffled words slipping through the line. That strange, deliberate breathing. "You said you didn't get any calls?" I asked him. Mark's eyes flicked toward me, then back to the monitors. "Nope. Just sat tight till the power came back. Like protocol says." Protocol doesn't say ignore the phones. His jaw twitched. Phones didn't ring. I stared at him. I didn't know whether to argue or just shut my mouth, because the thing about fear is that it eats your sense of logic alive. And some part of me was terrified that if I told him exactly what I'd heard, those things outside would hear me too. I decided to keep my mouth shut. The room felt colder now. Not like the AC, colder in a way that seemed to sink into my bones. My hands wouldn't stop trembling against the desk. Another figure shifted outside. Or maybe it was just my eyes playing tricks again. I leaned closer to the glass, careful not to touch it. The parking lot was silent, no wind, no movement except, yeah, that one had moved again. Closer. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed louder. A deep hum that wasn't just electrical. I could feel it in my teeth. My heartbeat started to sync with it, too fast, too heavy. I whispered without thinking, "They're still here." Mark didn't look up. Who? I didn't answer, because just then one of the shapes tilted its head. It was such a small motion, but it was enough to punch the air out of my lungs. The tilt was wrong. Too slow at first, then snapping just a little too far at the end, like something imitating human movement, but not getting it quite right. I backed away from glass. Mark was typing something into the system, his face flat and unreadable. Mark? He didn't answer. The lights flickered, not like a quick blink, more like the glow was being pulled from the bulbs. Fading, but not all the way out. The shadows in the corners of the room grew darker, heavier, and outside, the figures were almost at the glass. I stepped back again. My heel caught the edge of my chair and nearly sent me over. Mark kept typing. I wanted to grab him, shake him, scream at him to look, but my throat had gone dry. One of the shapes, now close enough for me to see its outline clearly, lifted an arm. It didn't bend right. It was long, too long, tapering into a hand that looked thin enough to snap. The fingers pressed slowly against the glass, and the glass dipped inward, like it was soft. I couldn't move. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that hand pressing deeper into the pane without breaking it. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. Then just as slowly, the hand pulled back. The figures stepped away, and all of them, all the shapes, turned at once, their heads snapping towards something I couldn't see. Mark finally stopped typing. "They'll be back," he said quietly. I didn't ask how he knew. I didn't want to know. I just sat there, watching them drift toward the edge of the lot until the darkness swallowed them whole. But even when they were gone, the cold stayed. The log stayed empty. And deep down, I knew they were still out there. I wasn't supposed to be in storage that night. The truth is, I was just trying to look busy. It was my third week on night shift at the dispatch center, and by then, I'd figured out a pattern. If you sit too long at the desk, the supervisors start tossing you calls no one else wants. Drunks who slur for 10 minutes without making sense. Couples in the middle of screaming matches. Teenagers prank calling in the middle of the night. But if you wander off with a clipboard in your hand, people just assume you're on some kind of assignment. That's how I ended up back in the storage room, breathing in air that tasted like dust and cold cardboard. The place was bigger than I expected, the kind of big that made the single overhead bulb feel useless. There were metal shelves packed with old binders, a few broken chairs, and boxes stacked on top of each other in crooked towers. It didn't smell like the rest of the building. Dispatch smells like burnt coffee and that faint electrical hum from the equipment. This place smelled still, like the air hadn't been disturbed in years. I was about to turn around when I saw it. A box sitting by itself, shoved against the far wall. No label, no date. Just a plain, beat-up cardboard box with edges that had gone soft from age. It wasn't on a shelf like the others. It looked like it had been placed there on purpose. Or hidden. I walked over and crouched down, running my fingers along the top. There was no tape, just a thin layer of dust that puffed up when I brushed it away. The cardboard felt dry and brittle, like it might tear if I pressed too hard. Inside were cassette tapes. Dozens of them. Maybe 50. All black. All unmarked except for a strip of yellowing masking tape on each one with a number written in faded pen. 01, 02, 03. Not in order. No case, no box art. Just loose tapes thrown together like someone didn't care if they got scratched. I picked one up and turned it over in my hand. The plastic was warm, like it had been sitting in the sun, even though the storage room was freezing. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a thin smear of something dark along the edge of the tape. Not ink, not marker. It looked like dry blood. I told myself it wasn't. My mind always jumps to the worst possibilities. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had handled this with a cut hand, or worse. I should have put it back. I should have walked away. But there was this gnawing pull in my stomach like I was standing at the edge of something I wasn't supposed to see. I took 3 tapes, 02, 07, and 14, and slipped them into my jacket pocket. The rest stayed in the box. There's an old player in the break room, shoved on top of a cabinet. Nobody uses it anymore. Everything's digital now. I grabbed it, locked myself in the supply closet, and set the first tape inside. I expected static, or maybe a test recording. But the second I hit play, I heard a voice. A man's voice, heavy with panic. breathing fast, stumbling over his words. "HLO? Is this? No, no, listen to me. She's in the house. She's in the house right now. I can see her." His voice was shaking so badly I could almost hear his teeth chatter. In the background, something creaked. A slow, stretching sound like wood bending under weight. "She's standing at the top of the stairs. No, she's moving, oh God." There was a sudden bang, and the man started sobbing. Then just silence. I waited for the dispatcher's voice. You can always tell when a call's been recorded off the line. There's a certain rhythm to it. The questions, the reassurance, the sound of keys clicking as they type. But there was nothing. No operator. Just the man's voice, alone in the dark. The tape clicked at the end and spun back to the beginning. I sat there, not moving, my fingers still curled around the player. I'd handled real calls before, domestic disputes, car wrecks, even a break-in once, but this didn't sound like a normal emergency. It sounded wrong, like it wasn't a call at all, like someone had just pressed record on a cassette and captured a moment they shouldn't have. I put in the second tape. Tape 07. This time it started with faint music, something tinny, like it was coming from a radio in another room. Then a woman's voice. They said they'd come back tonight. They said they'd take me this time. Her tone wasn't scared exactly. More resigned, like she'd been waiting for this. There was a long pause. Then, almost whispering, "If you hear this, don't answer the door." A knock came in the background. 3 knocks. Even, measured, deliberate. I felt my mouth go dry. The woman gasped once, like she'd been grabbed, and the tape ended. No dispatcher. No timestamps. No trace of when or where. Just voices trapped on plastic. I should have stopped after that. I didn't. Tape 14 was different. It was quiet for almost a full minute, just faint static. Then I heard breathing. Slow, deep, steady breathing. It went on, like whoever was holding the recorder was just standing there in the dark. Then a man's whisper, right into the microphone. "Turn around." I froze. Even though I knew it wasn't live, my body still reacted. I glanced over my shoulder like an idiot, half expecting someone to be standing there in the cramped supply closet with me. No one was, but my hands were shaking. The whisper came again. "Turn around." I slammed the stop button. The room was dead silent, but I could feel my pulse in my neck. That's when I noticed the sound. Not from the player. From outside the supply closet door. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Measured. They stopped right in front of the door. I didn't breathe. The steps didn't move away. They just shifted like whoever it was had turned to face the door. And then, nothing. No retreat. No creak of the floorboards. Just absence like they dissolved into the air. I waited another full minute before unlocking the door. The hallway was empty. Back in the storage room, the box was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wall where it had been. The dust pattern on the floor showed where it had sat, the rectangular outlines still clear. But the tapes were gone. All except the 3 in my jacket. I don't know why I kept them. Maybe because I wanted proof. Maybe because I didn't want to admit that a box full of voices could just vanish like that. That night, I put the tapes in my locker and went back to the floor. No one mentioned them. No one even asked why I'd been gone so long. But every time the phone rang, I felt a little spike of fear, wondering if the voice on the other end would sound like one I'd already heard. And sometimes, in the middle of a normal call, I could swear I heard a second voice under the first. A whisper, telling me to turn around, that I didn't even plan on listening to them. Not that night, anyway. When I left the storage room, I set the box on my desk like a paperweight. It was just there, silent, waiting. I told myself I'd hand it over to records in the morning. But by the time midnight rolled around, my brain wouldn't stop circling it. Every few minutes, my eyes would drift from the computer screen to the top of that cardboard lid. It was dusty in a way that didn't make sense, like the kind of dust that takes decades to settle. Even though I just brushed some off earlier, it still had that film. That smell, too. Old paper. Something else underneath, faint and metallic. Around 1:15 a.m., during the lull between calls, I gave in. The station still had an old tape player in the back corner of the room. The kind you had to plug in and press the big plastic buttons that clumped when you let go. I slid the first cassette out of its sleeve. The label was blank, the plastic foggy and scratched. The tape worked for a few seconds before the sound came in, static then a thin voice. Female. Breathing hard. He's inside. I think he's in the kitchen. I don't want to move. Please, you have to send someone. The panic in her voice made my stomach tighten, but something about it felt familiar. Not her, exactly, her words. She went on, whispering frantically, describing her house, her street, the color of her front door. And then she said the exact address. I froze. I'd taken a call for that address just last week. That night, the caller had been a woman in her late 20s, hiding in a bedroom while someone broke into her home. The police got there in time, arrested a man trying to pry open her back window. But this recording, the date written in tiny marker on the side of the cassette, said June 14th, 1998. It wasn't possible. I stopped the tape and stared at the numbers. My brain immediately started looking for an explanation. Maybe the dates were wrong. Maybe the dispatcher back then had just made up a placeholder date and never updated it. Maybe the call I remembered from last week was just coincidentally similar. But no, she had said the same words. Even the way she cried at the end sounded the same. I put in the second tape. More static. Then a man's voice, shaky, almost drowned out by wind. I was driving down County Line, and there's something in the road. A person, I think, but... He stopped. There was a long pause. I could hear his breathing speed up. It's not moving right. It's a sharp intake of breath, then silence for a few seconds. It's looking at me. My hands tightened on the table. 3 nights ago, I had taken almost the same call. Same stretch of road. Same description. Even the hesitation before saying, looking at me, was identical. The one I took had ended in a crash. The driver swerved into a ditch and shattered his ribs. But the date on this tape? October 3rd, 2004. I didn't play the rest of it. I remember leaning back in my chair, my ears buzzing. The tapes were too specific, too exact. My logical side kept pushing back. There's no way these are predicting anything. There's no such thing. Someone's messing with you. The dates are fake. But another part of me, the one that had been on night shifts long enough to feel when something was off, was whispering something I didn't want to hear. I grabbed another cassette. The handwriting on this one was smudged, but I could make out September 12th, 1995. When I pressed play, there was nothing but static at first. Then a scream. Not a sharp, startled scream. This was long, ragged, breaking in the middle. It went on for at least 20 seconds before turning into desperate, gasping sobs. The voice that came next was male. Young. There's fire. Oh God, there's fire everywhere. I can't see the stairs. There. Coughing. Heavy thuds. A crash. Then a faint voice in the background calling for someone. The tape cut off mid-sentence. I sat there staring at the player. 2 months ago, we'd gotten a call from a boy trapped in his house during a kitchen fire. His parents were gone for the evening. He was found unconscious at the bottom of the staircase. He survived, but barely. I knew his voice. It was the same boy on the tape. Only, this was recorded almost 30 years before he was even born. By then, my skin felt too tight for my body. I kept wiping my hands on my jeans, realizing I'd started sweating even though the room was freezing. I should have stopped. I should have unplugged the player, put the box back in storage, and locked it. But I didn't. I listened to 4 more tapes. A shooting in a parking lot, same as one from last month. A missing hiker found weeks later, same as one from last year. A child found wandering a road at night, same as one from just a few weeks ago. Each one exact. Same voices. Same background noises. Same words. By the time I leaned back, the stack of played tapes was almost to my elbow. I remember looking at the box again and realizing there were still dozens left. Dozens of futures, or pasts, or whatever the hell they were. I thought about telling someone. But how? I couldn't exactly walk into the supervisor's office and say, hey, these tapes know things before they happen. They'd write me up for tampering with archived evidence and probably send me to psych eval. I thought about just throwing them out. But part of me was afraid of what would happen if I did. What the event still happened, but no one ever called. That thought sat heavy in my chest the rest of the night. Every call that came in after that, I listened harder than ever, waiting for the moment I recognized a voice from a tape. And then, near the end of my shift, it happened. The phone rang at 4:42 a.m. A woman's voice came through, low, shaking. He's inside. I think he's in the kitchen. I don't want to move. Please, you have to send someone. Every word hit me like a hammer. It was her. The voice from the first tape I'd played that night. I read back the address without even looking. It matched. Exactly. The whole call went the same way. The panic, the whispering, the small gasp when she thought she heard him getting closer. It was like she was reading from a script I'd already memorized. By the time the officers got there, I already knew what they would find. And I was right. The man was caught at the back window. The woman was safe. Everyone else in the room thought it was a good ending. I couldn't stop shaking, because if the tapes were right about this, they'd be right about the rest. The shootings, the fires, the people who didn't survive. I didn't sleep that day. I kept thinking about how many cassettes were still in that box. And I realized something else. None of them had labels. None of them gave any warning about which ones were coming up next. If I wanted to stop something, I'd have to listen to all of them. And even then, I didn't know if I could. The voices stayed in my head long after I left the station. Sometimes I swore I could still hear the hiss of the tape turning, but I didn't want to go back down there. After what I'd heard on those first tapes, the details lining up with recent calls, the timestamps years apart from reality, it had been gnawing at me for days. But the thing is, once you've opened a door like that, you can't just close it again. Not really. The questions rot inside you until you give in. So I told myself it was just to verify something. That was a lie, of course. It was a Sunday night. Quiet shift. Only me, Janine, and a sleepy sergeant on duty in the front office. The dispatch room fell hollow without the usual chatter of overlapping voices. I waited until Janine got a call about some fender bender out on the highway and slipped out, keeping my coffee in hand so I'd look casual. I still had the keys to storage. The smell hit me as soon as I cracked the door. That old paper, dust and concrete smell that clings to your clothes. The box was right where I'd left it, shoved back against the wall like it might crawl away on its own if I didn't. I sat cross-legged on the cold floor and picked up the next tape in the stack. No label, just that faded gray plastic. I told myself, you're going to listen to one. Just one. I slid it into the recorder. The click, the faint hiss, the dead air. I was getting used to it. The first voice that came on was male, maybe mid-30s, sounding panicked. He was reporting a break-in. It wasn't unusual until I heard the location. It was the house on Mill Creek Road. The same one we'd gotten called to 3 days ago. The one where the owner had been found dead. My pulse picked up. This call was dated 2012. And then, the sound cut. The voice vanished. A new one came on. Female. Shaky. It took me a second to realize I knew her. It was Carol, one of our dispatchers before she retired last year. She was calm, giving instructions. Her voice had that warmth to it, the way she talked to scared callers like they were her own kids. But the thing was, Carol had never told me about this. And Carol told everyone her crazy call stories. I leaned closer. The caller, the panicked man, was describing the intruder in detail. His tone made my stomach knot. The description was eerily close to the suspect sketch that had gone out last week for a completely different case. I stopped the tape. My hand was sweating against the recorder. My own reflection in the dusty storage room window looked pale. I should have walked out right then. But instead, I slid in another tape. This one started differently. No background noise, just my own voice. I froze. It wasn't just someone who sounded like me. It was me. My breathing changed without my permission. I've worked dispatch long enough to know my own cadence. The way I drop my voice on certain words, the way I pause before I ask a hard question. But here I was, on a tape dated March 14th, 2016. I didn't even work here in 2016. I was speaking to someone, a man, whispering like he didn't want to be heard. Are you alone in the house? That's what I asked him. My voice, my exact voice. The man was crying quietly. He said something about she's in the walls. I felt a prickling heat crawl up my neck. I listened harder, my coffee long forgotten beside me. Stay on the line, I said, my recorded self. I'm sending units to your location. Then the man's voice cut out for a moment. A scraping noise filled the tape, like metal on wood. When he came back, his voice was even lower. She's looking at me. And then, my voice again. Calm, steady, professional. What's your address? And he said it. An address 2 streets from my apartment. I gripped the recorder so hard my fingers hurt. That house, it was empty. Had been for months. The date on the tape was 9 years old. I stopped it. I sat there in the dusty dark, the faint hum of the building above me, my own breathing the loudest sound in the world. It wasn't possible. Maybe someone had spliced my voice into it. Maybe it was a training tape that somehow got mixed in. That's what I told myself, over and over. But my stomach knew better. I rewound it a little, just to hear the beginning again. And that's when I noticed something that made my insides tighten. When I asked for his name, in the recording, he gave one. It wasn't a name from any case I knew. It was my father's name. The air in the room felt thick. I ejected the tape so fast I almost cracked the plastic. My fingers shook as I shoved it back into the box, deeper than the others, like I could bury it. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I dug through the rest of the tapes like a raccoon tearing through trash, the cardboard flaps squeaking under my hands. And then I saw it. One tape with a single strip of yellowed masking tape on it. And on that tape, written in faint marker, was my name. Not Training Salah. Not Operator 14. Just my first name. The edges of my vision tingled. I didn't want to know. God help me, I wanted to know. I put it in. The hiss. The click. The dead air. And then my voice again. Older, maybe. Tired. You have to listen to me very carefully. There was no caller. Just me. You'll find the box, the voice said. My voice. And you'll think you're making choices. But you're not. I swallowed so hard it hurt. The voice on the tape, me, kept talking. You're going to hear things that haven't happened yet. And if you try to stop them, you'll only make sure they happen. I could feel every hair on my arms lift. Don't listen to the last tape, the voice said. Do not. The recording stopped midward. Not a fade, not a click, just silence, like the tape had been eaten. I realized my teeth were clenched, so hard my jaw ached. I sat there, the recorder in my lap, my name staring at me from that piece of masking tape. In the corner of the room, a faint sound rose, the slow tick of a wall clock. But there was no clock in here. I stood up fast, hitting my shin on the box. The tick stopped. I told myself I'd put the tapes back and lock the door and never come down here again. But the box, it didn't look the same. Some of the tapes were gone. I swear I only took out 3, but the stack had changed, shifted, like someone had been here while I was listening. I backed toward the door, the key slick in my hand. When I locked it, I didn't even check if the lights were off. I just walked back to dispatch, trying to breathe normal, trying to make my face look like nothing was wrong. Janine was leaning back in her chair, scrolling her phone. Where'd you disappear to? She asked. Bathroom, I said. She nodded without looking up. The headset at my desk was waiting for me. I put it on, the routine muscle memory of logging back and almost soothing. Then the line rang. I answered automatically. 911. What's your emergency? Static. Then a voice. A man's voice. She's in the walls. The same words. The same tone. And I realized my hands were gripping the desk exactly the way I had in the tape, that I didn't plan on listening to the last tape that night. I told myself I'd save it for later. Maybe bring it to the supervisor. Maybe just burn it. But the thing was, the box didn't feel finished. It was stupid, but it was like there was a string running from inside it, right through my chest, tugging me closer. Like it wanted me to hear it. The rest of the tapes had been wrong enough. Calls about fires and accidents and murders that all happened weeks ago. Except the tapes were dated years before. That was impossible enough to keep me up at night. But this one, the one at the bottom, had no date. Just a strip of masking tape with 2 words written in shaky black marker. Last tape. That was all. No case number. No initials. Nothing. I sat there at the desk, the room lit only by the desk lamp and the glow from the dispatch consoles across the floor. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. Just me, the old cassette player, and the hum of the building's ancient ventilation. I took the tape out of the box. It was warm. I swear to God, it felt warm. I told myself that was just my imagination. My hands were clammy. My brain was tired. I've been breathing my own recycled fear for days now. But when I slid the tape into the player and pressed it down, the button stuck for a second, like it didn't want to go. And when I pressed play, I swear I could hear a faint click from somewhere behind me. And then, nothing. Just soft static. For a second I almost laughed, because maybe the last tape was just blank. Maybe this whole thing had been a ridiculous head game I'd built in my own mind. I was about to stop it when the static shifted. A voice came through. My voice. It wasn't like the one on the earlier tape, the one I'd never actually said. This was different. This was now. The sound of me sitting right here in this room on this night. I heard myself breathing, moving, the faint creak of my chair as I leaned forward. Then, the me on the tape said quietly, "You shouldn't have pressed play." I froze. I didn't even breathe. I looked at the tape deck. The counter was rolling, the spools turning, but I wasn't touching anything. I slowly turned in my chair, scanning the room. It was empty. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation and the faint whir of the tape. Then the me on the tape started talking again. "Look at the far console." "No, don't. You'll make it worse. Just listen." My throat tightened. It was my voice, but softer, almost shaky, like I'd been crying before I spoke. I didn't look at the console. I sat there, frozen, staring at the player as my own voice kept talking. "They've been here longer than you think. They've been listening to you for years. They like your voice. That's why they chose you." I could feel my pulse in my ears. I mouthed the words "who," but didn't say them out loud. "You'll see them soon." "Not yet. They're close. Don't turn around." I squeezed my eyes shut. The urge to look over my shoulder was unbearable. But then there was something else, faint, behind my voice, breathing. Not mine. Not the recorded one either. It was deeper, wet, like lungs that had been soaked in water. I couldn't stop. I glanced behind me. There was nothing, just the empty row of consoles. When I turned back, the tape had changed. The me on the tape was crying now. "You'll try to run. You won't get far. The door won't open. It never does." I swallowed hard and glanced toward the exit. It was just 10 steps away. I stood up. My hand reached for the knob. I twisted. It didn't move. I twisted harder. Pulled. Shoved my shoulder into it. The metal rattled, but didn't give. I backed away slowly. From the desk, my recorded voice said between sobs, "I told you." My knees felt weak. I didn't want to go back to the desk, but leaving it playing by itself felt worse, like it would keep talking even if I wasn't there, maybe to someone else. When I sat down again, my voice on the tape was whispering. "They're behind the glass now. Don't look. If you see them, they'll see you. The dispatch center has a big glass window that looks out into the hall." I could see its faint reflection in the console screens. Something was moving out there, just slow, like someone swaying side to side. I didn't turn my head. The me on the tape said, "It's almost time." The static roared for a second, swallowing everything. When it faded, I heard a sound that made my stomach clench. It was the sound of a phone ringing. Not from the tape, from out there in the room. One of the dark and used consoles was lit up, the red call light blinking. I stood halfway, then stopped. On the tape, my voice said, "Don't answer it." The phone rang again. "If you answer, you'll hear your own voice again. But this time it won't stop. It'll follow you home." It rang a third time. I pressed my palms into my knees and just waited. Finally, it stopped. The tape hissed for a long moment. Then, very softly, my recorded voice said, "They're in the room now." The air felt thicker. The warmth from the desk lamp seemed to drain out of the space. My skin prickled, every hair on my arms lifting, and then something touched my chair. Just the faintest scrape of fabric, like fingertips brushing past. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but the me on the tape kept talking. "It's okay. Don't fight. Just breathe. You'll be part of the tape soon." The static surged, loud enough to sting my ears. When it faded, I didn't hear my voice anymore. I heard someone else. A man's voice. Low. Cold. "She's ready." There was no other sound after that. No static. No breathing. Just silence. The counter on the tape deck stopped. I reached for the eject button with a shaking hand. It clicked open. The tape inside wasn't the one I'd put in. This one had a label. My name, written in the same shaky marker.